Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here. And welcome to a jam-packed Scooby snack of a Doctor Who show. Is it the fans' fault that there's a backlash for Doctor Who Season 11? Is it our fault that Doctor Who Season 11 is a creative failure? I'll also be asking, did Stephen Moffat stay with Doctor Who for too long, or were there other contributing factors? I'll also be talking about the fact that about a year or so ago, Stephen Moffat said that the BBC considered cancelling Doctor Who when David Tennant was leaving. And I'll be telling you that wasn't the reason. We'll be talking about Russell T Davies, Julie Gardner and Phil Collinson and what their departures actually meant for Doctor Who. So, are we to blame for the backlash for Season 11? Are we to blame for the creative failure for Season 11? No. But top critics would have you believe that we are. That it's our fault, that we're toxic, that we hate Season 11 because we have a female Doctor. That is not the reason. Doctor Who Season 11 simply doesn't work in any form, in rewatchability, in enjoyment, in entertainment, and that's why there's a backlash. That's why the ratings are on a downturn since episode 2 of Season 11. That's why when you hashtag Doctor Who, it's there. It's not because people are being positive about it. It's because a lot of people have a lot to say about what Chris Chibnall has done with the show. But top critics would have you believe there's just a few of us, just a few troublemakers being negative about Doctor Who. If you listen and you read the negativity, it all has a constructive criticism to it. And this is the thing that I'm saying, that many people are saying. They have gone against the Doctor Who consumer. The Doctor Who consumer that puts money in their pockets, that props up this IP and this franchise. And just like Lucasfilm, and just like the Star Trek kind of IP as well, they're starting to realise who is really in charge. The creatives are not in charge of these IPs. We are. Because if we don't watch, they sink. If we don't buy the stuff they sell for it, they sink. We have the power. If we walk away, they are absolutely finished. Right. Now, there's something else I want to talk about that I didn't mention on the top of the show. So a lot of Doctor Who defenders are saying it's wrong for fans to go onto Instagram, to go onto Russell T Davies' Instagram and Stephen Moffat's Instagram. And actually, I didn't know Steve actually had an Instagram, and I've actually gone and followed him. Don't worry, I'm not criticising Chris Chibnall. I'm just telling you how I'm looking forward to his Dracula show. But anyway, is it right for fans to go onto these people's Instagram and complain about Chris Chibnall, who is a friend of theirs? Well, here's the thing. I can tell you that Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat won't appreciate you doing it. Either they'll block you or they'll tell you to stop being negative. I mean, when I first started this channel, I actually did an Instagram video. It was a bit negative about one of Stephen's episodes. And I love Stephen Moffat. I think he's a fabulous creative. But I was just being, constructive with my criticism. And I tagged Russell T Davies. He sent me a message. He told me off and told me not to tag him in negative messages. So I haven't done on videos, and I haven't done it since. Here's the thing with creatives. They'll put their arms around you if you're being nice, but they don't want to hear criticism of them or their creative families. They won't have it. Even if you're being constructive, they just don't want to know. They just don't appreciate any criticism. And this is the problem with the situation right now. So I love Russell T Davies, but I was a bit disappointed when he put that comment on the video. Don't tag me. It's like here in Cyprus, I was dating someone, and the press over here was saying some nasty things about me. So she bought up all the local Cyprus mail papers so I wouldn't see them. Of course, ultimately, I knew what was going on, and I knew what was being said, and I kissed her on the forehead and thanked her. But I said, there's no point trying to protect me. And it's like Stephen Moffat and Russell T Davies. Yes, Chris Chibnall is surely their friend, but ultimately, they know Season 11 is a shit show, but they don't want to hear it. So the Doctor Who defenders saying, oh, how could people be complaining about, their friend on their Instagrams? Personally, I wouldn't waste my time. It's a total waste of oxygen to go onto their Instagrams, and and say, "Oh, hey, Stephen, I don't like Doctor Who season 11." They're not interested in getting in that conversation. Why? Because they still have to work in this industry, and they can't be frank and honest about the destruction and the dumbing down of Doctor Who. Do you think they're happy about it? Of course they're not. They hate it as much as we do, but there's nothing they can do. They're creatives, they're prominent creatives, but they have no power. Now let's talk about something else. There's always this kind of question and debate whether Stephen Moffat stayed as Doctor Who showrunner for too long. His first 2 seasons for me were wonderful. I know a lot of people don't like season 6. And can we dispel something about Stephen Moffat? His seasons were not complicated. They weren't. Unless you're thick, you shouldn't have been confused about what the man was doing. Yes, he wanted the audience to answer some questions. The problem is with this spoon-fed generation, they want answers to everything. When Sam Tyler jumps off that tall building in the finale of Life on Mars, I wasn't saying, "Oh no, I don't know what happened to him." I came up with my own theories because I've got an imagination. That's what these people want you to do. So Stephen Moffat posed some questions of the audience, but they were obsessed with finding out about the exploding TARDIS. I never wanted that answering. I liked having little theories about that. That was fun. That was the positive thing of Stephen Moffat's kind of era. Did he stay too long? Look, Stephen's a very frank and honest man, and he said once he heard that Matt Smith wanted to leave, he wasn't as motivated to do Doctor Who anymore. Now, you could say that's a bit unprofessional. He's doing one that, we would love to be doing that job. But obviously, his vision was Matt Smith. Now, it's interesting because Matt did 3 seasons, which they say is good, and nobody should do more than that because of different reasons, because of us getting too used to that Doctor and not getting used to a new Doctor, because of what happened with Tom Baker. And he was on there for a very long time. He didn't do as many episodes, but because those seasons were very, very short. But these are the pitfalls of being a long-running Doctor. But I don't think it's because he stayed too long that was the issue. He wasn't motivated. He wasn't feeling the passion for the show anymore. And he's got such a great imagination. But in the end, I think the BBC, and this links into my other conversation really about when Stephen said that the BBC considered axing Doctor Who when David Tennant left. That's not the reason. They knew once Russell T Davies, Phil Collinson and Julie Gardner left, the BBC had no clue how to run this show. Russell T Davies actually had to go to Stephen Moffat and bring him on as new showrunner. Now, I think this is ridiculous. Apart from Russell T Davies, it's actually the current showrunners who actually brought in the new showrunner to carry on after they've left. This is ridiculous. So the BBC don't even have the wherewithal or the knowledge or the passion for Doctor Who to know who to bring in. That they have to ask the current creative to replace themselves. It's an absolute joke. And then you can understand why we are where we are. Because it seems to me that Chibnall was actually a Stephen Moffat decision, which is insane. Stephen Moffat was in place because he was a good writer, not because he knew who should be running Doctor Who. And this is why they wanted to cancel it after Russell left, because they didn't know what to do. Russell created this big successful franchise, then he left. And what left with him was what Doctor Who was. And this was the big issue, really. Russell T Davies knew how to honour what Doctor Who was, but take it into an amazing kind of modern age situation, which attracted the mainstream audience. The man was a genius. But once he left, the passion and, the feel-good factor of Doctor Who left with him. And now everybody's lost. The BBC have no idea how to run this thing. Chris Chibnall has no idea. And they have to find someone, once Chris announces that season 12 is his final season, to grab this thing. Someone who loves Doctor who comes into work every morning and has a great geek nerd grin on their face, who wants to do this and to forget about their politics and to forget about their agenda. That is the reason they wanted to axe it after Russell left, not because David Tennant was leaving. Nothing to do with David. Excuse me. Morning, Fro. Excuse me. But that is the point, isn't it? We had this situation where we had this great showrunner, passionate for the IP and the franchise. He built it up, and there was nothing beneath him. It's absolutely ridiculous to think that this one entity could leave. But of course, he had Julie Gardner and Phil Collinson. They were a team. They were a family. They worked well together. The whole structure was there. But that whole structure left, and since then, they've been in trouble. And the BBC need to set something up here. They need someone in a Godfather role who comes in and decides who's going to be the showrunner for a certain point in time. My personal choice for this Godfather role will be Russell T Davies. But it seems to me that Russell doesn't want to be involved with Doctor Who anymore. So, yeah, in closing, no, don't waste your time going on Instagram complaining about Chris Chibnall and Doctor Who to Russell T Davies or Stephen Moffat, because they're not interested and they can't come out and talk about it either. God, this throat's terrible, you know. So comment down below. Let me know what you think. What do you think? Is there any point on going on Instagram to talk about Chris Chibnall? I understand it from the fans' point of view. We're all desperate and we're trying to find a friend, someone with power who can do something about this and save this show. But ultimately, they're the wrong avenue to go on because they don't have an interest in it anymore. Because Stephen Moffat wanted to leave it for ages, right? And so did Russell T Davies. And the problem is, those people don't even like us. They think we're a bunch of toxic people anyway. So it's no good trying to go to them anyway. They're not our mates. I respect them a great deal. But we're never going to go down the pub for a drink or anything, are we? So at the moment, Doctor Who is in a great mess. It isn't the fans' fault. It's the BBC's fault for not having better planning. And it's Chris Chibnall's fault for not having the imagination to know what Doctor Who needs.